Awesome. We are live, everybody. Welcome to the Sport Development and Peace Online Summit. And look, I'm super excited. This is the first interview for today. And before I start, I just want to say that if you do have a question for the speakers with Vickie and Charlotte, put a question in capital letters and then I can scroll through them and we'll get your questions involved during today's chat. And look, we're going to get straight to it. People are joining us already live. Charlotte, would you mind just explaining who you are, what you do, and like a little brief story of your sports career journey as well?
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today, Ed, and everyone else who's joining us. So I am Charlotte Woods from the Brand Builders. I'm the communications manager, but I also do a lot of one-on-one work with athletes through athlete mentoring around brand and sponsorship, which is probably one of my absolute favorite things to do, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I got into the sporting career completely by accident, to be honest, through an internship with Vickie when we were previously the sponsorship consultants around social media. So I kind of fell into it, but I think that's one of the best ways to do it because it's just surprises and fun and learning things that you wouldn't have expected to, which I like a lot.
Awesome. Vickie, would you mind just explaining to the live audience who you are, what you do, and your little story in the sports industry?
Yeah, it's a really funny thing. Mine was accidental as well. So I'm Vickie Saunders. I'm the founder of the Brand Builders, which was previously the sponsorship consultants. And I used to help my partner many years ago engaging sponsorship for himself as an athlete. And what I did was I took everything that I knew from the corporate world where I worked in marketing and bid writing, and I helped him apply that in his approach to businesses to get sponsorship. And we were very successful. And a lot of people were asking me for advice. And I saw that there was a need for that kind of education within the sports and the business and the government sectors. So that's kind of how I moved into that. And I saw that opportunity and just went for it. So yeah, I love what I do. Like Charlotte, I'm still very hands-on, but actually she's very involved in the development of the business as well. So we work at that strategic level, but also very much on the ground. So we really know what's happening in all aspects of the industries that we work in.
And just before we go deep into this conversation, the one thing I do want to talk about, because I've had the privilege to already interview on my podcast show, I love to talk about building real good working relationships, because you two have just grown. Like when Charlotte, you started your internship and how you're so involved now working together. Vickie, from your perspective, taking Charlotte on as an intern, how have you just seen things progress as a business together? Would you mind just sharing this little insight of your friendship and working friendship as well?
Yeah, that's a lovely observation that you've made. One thing that I always wanted in my career when I was younger was opportunities. And one of the things that caused me to move on from different jobs that I was in over the years was a lack of opportunity, that people weren't giving me the chance to have a go at something, to try something, to bring a skill that I knew I had or could have to that role. So that's been my thing from the start with Charlotte, is just giving her those opportunities to bring and to experience and to try stuff and to treat everything almost like as a mini project. Like, let's give this a go, and to be able to give her support and but also autonomy when appropriate. And I think it's been amazing. And knowing that I'm not the best at everything, that there's someone else that's actually better at doing something than me, letting go of it and letting Charlotte and the other people that work with us, do their thing.
Charlotte, would you mind just sharing your little insight, if that's cool with you, over the years?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of similar to what I was saying before, in that I fell into it. I like the surprises and the surprise opportunities that I've been exposed to through working with Vickie and the Brand Builders. I would say that I'm someone who likes to follow a strict path. And so this has been good for me because it's not allowed me to do that. It's opened me up to things that I probably wouldn't have identified myself. And then it's also taught me to identify opportunities. So I would say that's been the big thing for me, is just like surprise and being on the lookout for things as well.
So just for the live audience who, as we all know, we're at home most of the time now, Charlotte, I just want to jump into you saying creating your own opportunities. What guidance would you give on that with regards to how people can identify those opportunities during this period of time?
I would say look for them where you wouldn't expect them. I think oftentimes we look at the opportunities that we're used to, and so they're not really opportunities. They're just things that we're doing as part of our regular routine. So look to people who you admire what they're doing, and maybe they're doing something a little bit different. Definitely look to be doing anything that you can do online at the moment, and be open to things that don't necessarily provide a profit or aren't of great immediate value right now, but they'll set you up in the future. I think that would be really valuable for athletes, business people, students, everyone at the moment.
Vickie, I can see you nodding your head. Do you want to add to anything to that out of interest?
No, that's why Charlotte works with us, because she's just I mean, that's it. I think being open to opportunity means being curious, and that's use this as an incredible opportunity to be curious about things, about life. Allow what feels like is maybe destroying the world is actually allowing us to kind of connect in a different way. You know, there's this in one side, you know, there is this serious medical and life-threatening crisis, but for many of us, it's not that, and not immediately anyway. And so it does give us pause to be curious and to be open to other things. So I know it's very vague, but in what Charlotte was saying, you know, just to not think that you know what you're looking for, but to be open to opportunities as they arise. Yeah.
And just relating to what you're saying, sometimes I think what you said is really important, because today's International Day for Sport for Development and Peace. And how important is that to highlight that now? Because most of the time we're talking about the elite end of sport, a big game, a derby. I think this is a great opportunity to reflect on the necessities of the spirit of sport. What are your thoughts on that, Vickie, out of interest?
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's something that as a business we have addressed and do consider in a lot of what we do. I thought I might get Charlotte to share on this, because we had actually prepared some answers, and I know that she thought about this quite specifically. So, yeah.
Well,
Sure.
in our business, we've actually been really lucky to do a lot of work in that area. A few years ago, and we're still working on it at the moment. We did a project with the government around helping junior sports and businesses connect through avoiding junk food sponsorship. So, you know, that's one way. We were also part of an initiative to connect athletes and volunteer positions through a Play for Lives campaign that's been organised by Craig Foster and B Collective. And we've also been part of the Game Over campaign, which is about getting athletes and the sporting community to raise awareness about what's happening with the refugees who have been detained illegally in Australia. So, you know, I think global peace, athletes, sports, doing good stuff in the world, creating some world change, I really think it's everything. It's so important, and it's great for athletes. It's great for the sporting community. And there's so much that can be done in this period right now as well. Athletes have a little bit more time on their hands. Sporting communities have a little bit more time on their hands. So they can definitely step up and step into those roles.
I find that really interesting. I hope the audience do. And even if you watch the replay as well, guys, I hope you find this interesting. And there's one thing I want to elaborate a little bit more, Vickie, when we did our podcast, a good 3 years ago. You said a great piece of advice where you said, don't focus on the top 1%, focus on the other 99%. So it's very similar to what Charlotte was saying about looking at communities, the refugees and stuff. Would you mind just elaborating on that advice you gave me over those years? Because I think if people not just want to work in sport, but be involved in sport, I think the 99% is where you get the really interesting projects.
Yeah, totally. And it's sort of things that just happen, don't they, sometimes by accident, but they're just coincidences or fate. I'm not sure. When we started as a business all those years ago, the idea that we could teach the everyday athlete, the non-elite, the non-famous athlete, how to connect with businesses and how to do communications and how to grow their own career, you know, in that space that we always thought was reserved for the top 0.1% of athletes who are famous. You know, so we naturally went out to the grassroots and said, you know, this is how you guys as a non-elite or a non-famous athlete or a small local business can do cool things together to develop your skills, to be profitable, to sustain your business or your life as an athlete, and to do good stuff in the world. Like, that's always been that trifecta. Make it, you know, profitable, enjoyable, and meaningful. And, you know, for me, it's never been about how can we connect with those super successful athletes and businesses and, you know, organizations who are throwing millions of dollars around. It's how can we help the people who, you know, are running a small business, who are an athlete, who love their sport, and are never going to be famous or win, you know, gold medals at the Olympics. How are we going to help those people? Actually, and sorry, just maybe they are going to win gold medals at the Olympics, but they're not necessarily going to get millions of dollars of sponsorship. The two don't actually go hand in hand necessarily. So how can we work with the other 99%? Because that's the interesting space. That's where there's a desperate need for innovation and knowledge and collaboration and all the stuff that really gets our juices flowing. You know, the millions of dollars and the big contracts, yawn, so boring. You can, you know, easy. But when you don't have a lot of money and you're not famous and you're a small business and, you know, you've got all that, that's where it gets interesting. So from a selfish perspective, that's the space that we like to play in. But from a doing good things in the world, that's the right place to play in. And there's so many more interesting things that people can do because you have to get creative, you have to be innovative, and you have to find a deeper meaning than money.
Charlotte, just to add on that, how important is it to have those sort of creative vibes with these sort of projects? And would you mind just elaborating on some of the work you've done with Vickie of being creative? Because I know you're part of, like, you manage the communications on Facebook, and you have that community, and you do some awesome work there. So could you just provide a little insight to the live audience of the importance of being creative?
Yeah, I like using that word creative for it. I think it is about being creative in the strategy that you use and how you communicate with the people that you're working with. And again, bringing it back to opportunity, looking for where you didn't think there could be one, but actually there's quite a lot. So, I mean, recently we've done a big online program with High Performance Sport New Zealand with loads and loads of their athletes. And, you know, we can't get over to New Zealand to work one-on-one with all of them because that's just an immense amount of travel. But through taking a more creative approach, that it took us a while to get there, actually, through delivering a one-on-one online mentoring program, we were able to do that because we thought outside of the box a little bit. We don't love doing online stuff, so we made sure it fit their needs and it fit our needs, and we were able to provide the most value for those athletes. And it's been one of the most rewarding projects that I've ever been involved in personally, because I feel like I really get to connect with the athletes. We as a team get to connect with the organization, who is incredible, and their advisors are involved. Everyone's involved in a very intimate level, which is so nice. So I think creativity in those opportunities is just about thinking outside of the box a little bit, not too far. Don't like go completely away from the box, you know, stand around the perimeters. But definitely don't be afraid to think a little bit bigger, I guess.
And the one thing I just want to highlight with you, Vickie, I think this is really important for people who actually want to pursue a career in the sports industry. How do athletes like to be communicated out of interest? Because as a fan, it's a totally different perspective as being, you know, like a mentor or like, say, a consultant trying to help their career. Would you just mind establishing the difference, Vickie? And I'll get your involvement as well, Charlotte, as well. So I think this is quite important, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think meeting them where they are, but don't patronize them. Like, there's, you know, one thing that really annoys me is when people say that athletes are lazy, or they'll say, you know, they're not as intelligent, but, you know, they'll sort of not have high expectations on their academic or their intellect because they assume that they're just focused on sport. And that really annoys me because it's just not the case. And I think what I find in communicating with athletes is respecting and acknowledging that they probably do have a lot of commitments. But if something's important, man, they can do cool stuff. You know, they'll grab it and run with it. But they've got to know why they're doing it. Like, what's the end goal? What are we doing this for? Also, what does it look like? What does the journey look like? What am I signing up for? And then that's it. You know, they'll make an informed decision because they're pretty smart, and they'll make a decision about whether they want to do it. If they don't, and are then able to sort of follow that process and do amazing things. You know, we do a lot of work with groups of athletes and with staff of organizations, and we work in corporate as well. So, you know, we are able to compare what athletes are like with employees, with, you know, people in the corporate world or in the business world compared to the sports industry. And so, you know, I would say that athletes are actually probably the more productive. You know, if you get them into a workshop situation and you say, here's the task, go for it, they go for it. They don't tend to question as much. They're more coachable, and they're more ready to give things a go, even if they fail. You know, they don't have that fear of failure that a lot of people have that aren't athletes. So, yeah, I think that's it. Just meet them where they are, allow them to get clarity of what the expectation is, and have an amazing time with them, and allow them to take ownership of stuff in their own way.
Charlotte, how do you want to add to that? And also, just a quick question, which I'm a bit intrigued, is how have the athletes you've worked with really improved your own self-development out of interest?
Oh, okay. So I would say pretty similar to what Vickie has said. I would say everything that she said is spot on, obviously.
Have to.
I'm here. Yeah. But I would add to that and say that empathy would be a big one for me, and how I communicate with them. Not treating them like they're babies, because they're not, but recognizing that they have a lot of stuff going on in their life, and they're not just training all of the time. There's a very small percentage of athletes who are able to dedicate their entire life and working week to training and being an athlete. They've got families, they've got jobs, they've got studies. There's so much going on for them. So recognizing that part of their life, I think, is incredibly important, especially with the type of athletes that we work with. And then I guess the thing that they've taught me about in my own self-development would be empathy. I've always been very people-focused and tried to put myself in other people's shoes. But because I've worked with so many different types of athletes, and they've really challenged my own personal perspective of what an athlete's life looks like, it's really forced me to bring empathy into every piece of work that I do with them, whether it's just talking with them on social media, or if it's a mentoring session or creating a program for them. I would say that that's a huge thing, and it's really improved my personal development as well.
Just talk about personal development, Vickie. The one thing we have for this summit as a theme is all about skill sets. This is probably the best opportunity for people at home to upskill themselves with different learning. Would you mind just sharing one skill set that has supported you throughout your life development, reflecting now?
Yeah, this is actually one that we use within the business as well. So it's around everybody being aware of their values. So really, essentially, your own personal brand, and we all have one. You know, whether you're a business or an athlete or just a everyday person, we all have a brand. And that's, really who we are, what we communicate to the world, how we navigate our life, the decisions that we make, and so forth. And underpinning that is values. And we believe in putting those values into action. I believe in putting those values into action. And it's easier said than done. So what we've done is have this structure in the business where our values are put into action on a weekly and a monthly basis through the activities that we do. So if one of them is compassion, we use it as a guiding principle in the way that we work with our clients. If we've got a client who's not replying to emails, rather than get funny about it, we would take the time to consider maybe there's something else going on in their life, or they've got other things, other priorities, just little things like that. And then at the end of the month as a group, we reflect on our 5 business values, and we each share examples of how we put them into action in our working life. So it's actually it's a bit mechanical, but it means that we're actually putting those values into action rather than just saying, oh yeah, we have these values and we don't actually do anything with them, which I think a lot of people and a lot of organizations do. They know their values, but they're not necessarily exercising them on a frequent basis.
So just with a follow-up, because like this is all about taking action as well, and you sort of highlighted there, how would what's that first step for somebody of doing those values? So could it be, for example, getting a pen and paper and just putting down 5 values and then reading them every week? Like that's just what I've just come up with of what you've just said. Is that the first step for somebody who's watching live, to implement them values and putting those values into action? Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So we have it. So it's a reminder on a Monday morning. It says, how am I going to live my values this week, or live our values this week? Because it's a business perspective that we take. And then on a Friday afternoon, there's a little reminder that says, how have I lived our values this week? And so you've got those values written down. There's a process to identifying them, but the idea is that you go through that. So they become just habitually part of what you do, but you've got to do it a little bit, intentionally to start with. I
love it. Charlotte, what's one skill set that you'd like to share with the live audience that has supported you with your sort of self-development? I know you said empathy already, but just another one to add to the mix.
I would say values is very important, and empathy, but I'll say something a little bit different. I would say people skills and how you connect with and work with other people, which again relates to values and empathy and all of that. But being open to meet people where they're at and form really good relationships. I have a special skill for doing it online. I don't know how that happened. I just randomly was blessed with it. So I would say that's one big thing for me. But definitely being open to creating really good relationships with people that are real and based on true friendship, even if they are business related. I think it's really important to have friendship and fun and all of that in what you do in work and life and everything else.
Absolutely, and especially in the sports industry, like when people say networking, it gets all cringy, but actually I say to students, it's meaningful conversation. So just for somebody to take action today, Charlotte, on creating, let's say, good communication ethics, if that makes sense, what one tip would you give somebody to be better communicator online out of interest?
I would say to be friendly. I know that sounds really basic and boring, but be friendly. Create a friendship, even if you are being strategic about it. It's going to be so yucky. It's not going to last. So form a genuine friendship. Find something that you have in common, whether it's just liking a particular brand of milkshakes or something like that. Base it on real friendship and find things that you can both really talk about within business and outside of business.
And Vickie, with regards to how we're living now, out of interest, what changes would you like to see in the world of sports moving forward?
Ooh, here we go. This is a good one. So Charlotte mentioned earlier that we have always, and very much so in the last year or two, we've been very involved in campaigns. So around social impact outcomes through the vehicles of business and sport and collaborations and thinking and doing differently. So add those in and you've got a recipe. So think of that almost, that's like the base, that's the vanilla cake. You've got business, you've got sport, you've got people, you've got a purpose, you've got some kind of social impact. Then you can add the choc chips or the blueberries or whatever to make, your different flavors. But that recipe is delicious. And I mean that metaphorically as well. It is just a fantastic combination. So here we are. As a business, not many of us are going to be very profitable for the next little while unless we're making, essential items like toilet paper and masks and food and stuff. Yeah. So for those of us who are not necessarily essential, what a wonderful opportunity to start looking at how we can change the way that we do things when there is a profit to be made. So is there stuff that we can start doing now, such as volunteering, such as collaborating, such as skills development and empowering the people within our organizations, and, bringing those recipe elements together? Can we be doing that now, not for profit, and then add profit to it as another, addition to the flavor? I think yes. And I think if you want to do that, you should check out Play for Lives campaign, because that is where we've brought together businesses, not-for-profits, sport, and this amazing platform where, you know, individuals and organizations can offer themselves as volunteers, but not just packing food. You know, it's their skill sets, it's online, it's mentoring, it's marketing, it's social media and counseling. So there's this vehicle that people can keep developing and creating cool stuff. It's not about profit at the moment, but you could add that in later. Yeah.
Charlotte, how do you want to add to that?
I would say that it is definitely a time for athletes, like I was saying before, to step up and get involved with campaigns like that. But also maybe spend some time on themselves and their own self-development, which I'm sure you're really big on, Ed. So we've actually just put out a free resource for athletes around developing their story. It's an activity book. So doing things like that, maybe taking a course that you wouldn't have had time to otherwise, just, you know, using this as a positive experience amongst the negative stuff.
Absolutely. As I said, it's one of the best times to do this. And look, we're getting nearly to the end. And I just want to say a massive thank you. And before we finish up, I'll just love a tip from both of you, because I know you specialize in personal branding. Could you just both provide, I'm being really cheeky, but you're so good at what you do with athletes. I think you can relate to so many people at home now. What is one tip, Vickie, you would give to somebody to improve their personal brand? And that's in many formats, but what's that one tip you would give?
So as you might have noticed, I tend to be like the sort of bigger kind of, I guess, organizational level perspective. And Charlotte's a lot more about connecting with the individuals. We both are, but that's like our niche. So I'm going to take the same approach for this and say, find your message. So the message that you would say if the whole world just stopped for a second and listened to what you had to say, what have you got? What would you love everybody to know and to hear? And let that be your guiding principle for everything that you do. So whatever you're doing, it's contributing to that message. So my message, you know, I believe in human rights. Absolutely. Like, that's my thing. I believe everybody has the right to be free and safe. And that's a guiding force in everything that I do, whether that's empowering, you know, a businessman to know his brand enough to be able to lead his people, or whether it's around, you know, empowering an athlete with the confidence to go and approach a sponsor, or someone to just, you know, believe in themselves a bit more. So find your message and, yeah, be true to that.
That is an awesome tip. Charlotte, what's your tip out of interest?
Mine has to be, because I say it all the time, I think I just can't stop saying this, embrace the things that make you uniquely you. Don't worry about what other athletes are doing. We already have a Serena Williams and all the other famous athletes. They already exist. If you try and copy them and do exactly what they're doing, you won't stand out. You're just going to be a copycat. We need you to be yourself and embrace the things that make you a little bit different from other athletes or other people. So just embrace the things that you think are potentially weaknesses. I often hear that, oh, you know, this is so weird and different from other people, so it's a weakness. No, it's actually a strength. So definitely don't be afraid to stand out. And that might be as simple as saying, you know, one of my passions is, I don't know, mechanics. I had an athlete tell me that recently. They're really into mechanics and car racing, and they're actually a swimmer. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I had never heard someone be also into swimming, a competitive Olympic swimmer, and really into mechanics and fixing cars and doing proper racing. So I think those things really help you stand out, and it also makes your life a hell of a lot easier because you're just being yourself instead of projecting something else.
Look, ladies, that is brilliant, and thank you so much. Honestly, we're half an hour, and it feels like 3 minutes. I've enjoyed it that much. Vickie, Charlotte, how can people interact with you online?
So you can find us almost anywhere that you can find people online, except for maybe TikTok. We're not on there yet. I don't think we ever will be. I don't think we're cool enough and hip enough for it. But at the moment, I would say the best places to connect with us are our website, which is www.thebrandbuilders.com.au, as well as LinkedIn, which is where you can really connect with us on a more personal level. And the website is where you can find all our resources and learn more about what we do with clients and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to your website in the comments section. And before we finish up, to the live audience, or if you're watching the replay, let us know your biggest learning lesson down below. And there's some awesome ones I've already thought of, like know your message is the one that hits the spot for me. So put your learning lesson down below. And also, I didn't manage to say this to the speakers, but actually, we are so proud enough for the summit to kick off that we partnered with a social impact partner, Common Goal. So you can actually make a donation to the COVID-19. It got launched last night. So the link down below, you can make an impact. This today's about our goal as the summit. Our summit goal is to educate 10,000 people. So if you have liked it so far, please share, please like. We'll appreciate your support. Charlotte, Vickie, thank you so much for joining us for the first interview for today. And just a massive thank you from me and the summit team.
Thanks, Ed. You're doing a great job. Thanks for what you're doing for the sports world. And yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. We'll be back in around an hour's time. Speak soon.